Sometimes repression doesn't come through a cop with a gun. Sometimes it shows up as a new person at your meeting. Infiltration has been a key tactic of the state for decades. During the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Power movement, the FBI and local police planted informants in everything from churches to student groups to armed collectives through COINTELPRO and beyond. They didn't just observe, they actively created tension, escalated conflict, set people up, even unalived various people, and beyond. Today, infiltration looks both similar and different, but it's still happening. Undercover cops at protests, online accounts encouraging illegal action, people pressured into cooperating with law enforcement. In this part of Security Culture 101, we're talking about how infiltration works, what entrapment looks like, and why these tactics aren't about public safety. They're about destroying solidarity and sowing distrust. Welcome to Security Culture Part 3, Infiltration and Entrapment, How the State Undermines Trust.
För radikala idéer och för motstånd mot förtryck från myndigheterna, inte bara i Amerika utan över hela världen. Det har demonstrerats till hennes förmån i Afrika, det har demonstrerats i Latinamerika, över hela Europa. Från Ryssland har kommit protester. Det var här det började. Det här är Marine Countys domstol. Den 7 augusti 1970 stod här James McLean åtalad för ett knivslagsmål inne i San Quentin-fängelset. Han var en fånge på det fängelset. Och som vittnen uppträdde 2 andra svarta fångar. Det han har egentligen ingenting med Angela Davis att göra. Man vet inte ens om de kände varandra. Mer än att i rättegångssalen som åhörare satt också Jonathan Jackson. 17 år gammal, yngre broder till Soledadbrodern George Jackson med vilken Angela Davis hade så nära som kontakt. Jonathan Jackson reste sig upp i domstolslokalen och skrek alla står stilla, tog upp ett vapen, lämnade över flera vapen till de 2 svarta vittnena och till den åtalade och så tog de en gisslan. Man kom inte längre än hit ut på parkeringsplatsen. Här blev det skottlossning med polisen var vi både domaren, de 2 svarta vittnena och Jonathan Jackson, 17 år, dödades. Polisen sa efteråt att Angela Davis ägde och hade köpt de vapen som Jonathan Jackson använde. Själv försvann Angela Davis och man hittade henne först långt senare på ett hotell i New York. Det är åtalet mot henne. Eftersom hon ägde vapnen så är hon medskyldig till det mord som ägde rum här. Och efter enligt Kaliforniens lagar så kan man för sådan medverkan till mord också bli dömd till döden.
This trial, I think, will be historic in its unfairness. There's no evidence at all to involve Ms. Davis in the charges, none whatsoever. And I think that they seized upon this opportunity to try and put her to death. Governor Reagan originally fired her from her teaching job at the University of California, and this is simply an extension of that, as far as I'm concerned. The evidence presented to the grand jury shows that the guns that were used in the shootout in San Rafael were registered in her name. Now, assuming for the sake of argument that that's true, that's all it shows, that she owned some guns. There's nothing illegal in the state of California about owning guns. They were registered, and it's not a crime. But because of the inflammatory press that had built up around this incident, and because of the need that the government felt to put her in jail and to hopefully, from their point of view, to kill her, they could put enough pressure in that grand jury room to get an indictment.
Ingen tror att hon låg bakom morden. Hennes rättegång kommer att bli mer politisk än många andra. Det kommer hon själv och hennes tusentals anhängare att se till. Hon har fått den bästa utbildning som någon svart i Amerika har fått. Universitetsprofessorerna sa det var den mest begåvade elev de någonsin hade haft. Och i Tyskland mötte hon sedan Herbert Marcuse. Det var från honom hon fick intresset för filosofi och marxism väckt. Hennes doktorsavhandling handlade om Kants analys av våldet i den franska revolutionen. Hon är intelligentare och kunnigare än de flesta. Hon har inte brutits ner av fängelsevistelsen. Hon hungerstrejkar i fängelset som protest mot förhållandena där. Hon är svart, hon är kvinna, hon är åtalad för mord. Trots det framstår hon som ett ideal, inte bara för kvinnorörelsen utan för de flesta svarta.
And in my case, when I think about the fact that Ronald Reagan was the governor of California, Richard Nixon was the president of the U.S., the whole apparatus of the state was set up against me. They had all of their resources, and the FBI, the police, and they really meant to send me to the death chamber in order to make a point. It really didn't matter who I was, or it was that I was a very convenient figure to make a point that they would suppress any efforts at revolution and liberation.
Mycket få har träffat henne. Hon sitter i denna byggnad, en domstolslokal strax utanför San Francisco, i källarvåningen i ett liten cell.
Check out my due process video and the Why the US is Fascist. I talk a lot about the LA-8, Mahmoud Khalil, and other cases where the FBI infiltrated or tried to entrap individuals. A lot of the tools of surveillance the state is using is either towards the sheer fact of detaining and arresting someone to dissuade them from doing this movement work, or to create the conditions that make it more possible for the state to target, arrest, or detain someone. It's important to define the difference between entrapment and infiltration in these varying modes of the ways that the state can enter a movement under secrecy. And let's start with infiltration and give you some context. Infiltration has had a long history of targeting lawful dissent, disrupting solidarity, and stoking paranoia, often used to push activists towards violence and then criminalize them. Think Eric McDavid, or what the J20 protests faced in terms of there being outside security companies being hired to try and agitate folks from the inside. Informants, on the other hand, are paid large sums of money to provoke illegal activity. Informants are people that are typically a part of the movement and then are flipped, and then almost never used against white supremacists or fascist groups to the same extent that they are for Black Lives Matter, environmental movements, Muslim organizers.
National captain of the Black Panther Party. They are making it their business through process arresting me and my wife, through a process arresting numerous Panthers on the block.
The Oakland police, well known for its brutality, never misses the chance to harass the Black Panthers, to search them, to trap them, to enter their houses without warrants.
When J. Edgar Hoover testified in Congress about the Black Panther Party, he said the Black Panther Party was the greatest threat to the internal security of America. And he was getting congressional approval that if this is the greatest threat, then you have to give me permission to handle this threat. And it's going to be a program that I'm not going to speak about in this congressional hearing, but those of you who are on these special committees are going to fund and allow me to do this thing called COINTELPRO, the counterintelligence program. And the thing to understand about the counterintelligence program is it wasn't just good old-fashioned police work. Let me put the Panthers under surveillance and go after, them if they're doing something wrong. It was counterintelligence. It was to destabilize. It was lies. It was phone calls. It was letters. It was agent provocateurs. It was undercover cops and FBI agents to destabilize the Panther Party, which leads to the Panther 21 case. But here's the important point to remember in all of this. J. Edgar Hoover hated the breakfast program more than he hated the self-defense program, more than he hated in those cities that were legal, where Panthers were patrolling the police with legally possessed rifles and shotguns and law books.
There's a really great book called War at Home that talks about the different levels of infiltration and entrapment, and I really recommend checking that out, so I'm going to put a link in the description. When we think about infiltration, it's usually undercover cops posing as activists, journalists, or supporters. They join meetings, chats, or mutual aid efforts to collect information or disrupt, and they sometimes initiate escalatory action. So let's say you're doing a meeting and you're trying to figure out how to do mutual aid downtown on 4th of July, and maybe someone who's really new to the group who could be an infiltrator might say, fuck 4th of July, we're going to do this, this, and this. And it's some crazy, wild, over-the-top stuff where it's like, who the fuck is this person and why are they suggesting this? We don't know, but certain modes of behavior can be signifiers that someone may be an outside actor coming into a movement with ill purposes. And the common tactics that they use are trust building, so bringing resources, showing up constantly, providing emotional support, agitation, pushing for violence or armed resistance, or illegal direct action, like the Cleveland Five, who were accused of allegedly plotting to bomb a bridge after an informant was coerced by police to come into their group and give them jobs and treat them like human beings. I was watching a really great video that I'm going to put up in this section that was just so stirring. And it really is mainly out of the UK, but there are so many instances of infiltrators coming in and dating individuals in the movement, sleeping with them, being personally connected to people for years.
Congress last year on Google. Other friends I have are on no-fly list, and they're still on no-fly list. And I would basically just sort of say that, you know, you learn a lot being on a terrorist watch list. I think everyone should do it at least once.
Hi. Oh, wow, I can't actually see any of you. I've been dreading making this introduction. I'm one of 8 women who are bringing a case in the UK right now against the Metropolitan Police for assault and deceit and abuse of our human rights. I'm in the program as Lily, and any of you who might have read about the case or some of the articles that have appeared in Germany and Britain about it would know me as Lily. In 2003, I met this man, Mark Stone, at a meeting for the mobilization against the G8 summit in 2005 in Scotland. He was charming and disarming, and he shared my interests and he shared my passion for the political things that we were doing. And he told me lots of his most intimate stories and secrets. We became very close. We spent 2 years living together as lovers. He became very close to my parents. He spent many nights in their home. He attended my grandmother's 90th birthday party. He met my entire extended family. And we remained friends for many years after that, very close friends, until 2010, when I received a phone call from friends in the UK who told me that this man, Mark Stone, who I shared my life with, never existed. And the impact of that, I think Merrick describes it very well, the grief and the paranoia and the sense of shame really paralyzed me for a very, very long time. Because of the personal nature of the case that we're bringing, our anonymity has actually been protected by the court. And that privacy and anonymity was very, very dear to me. And I've spoken out before, but always under a pseudonym. I've avoided being videoed. But over the last 5 years, there's been a lot more revelations about these undercover police officers. And I now know that between 1998 and 2010, at least 6 people that I knew and worked with, and some of whom I considered friends, were actually undercover police officers. And this year, I went to the Circumvention Tech Festival in Valencia, and after a pretty weird control by the police, we found this GPS tracker stuck under my car. So much for my privacy. And finding the GPS tracker was a bit of a wake-up call. They've basically been targeting me for the last 17 years. And that happened in part because I didn't believe that they would sink so low. I didn't believe that I was doing anything that would be interesting enough. And so I think that people need to know that this happens to real people. And I've started to feel like the anonymity is a bit like a gagging order. And so I've decided to give it up. So hi, that's me. Wow, that feels weird. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the reasons why we're bringing this court case, and you can get rid of that screen now, thank you. And yeah, the first reason is really personal, like the knowledge about Mark not being who I thought he was kind of like a computer virus. It corrupted all my memories of those times, and it affects all my relationships that I've had since. And trying to fight back, bringing this case against the police was a way of taking back control of the story of my life. And it's been a really powerful experience because we're a group of women who've been through similar things over a 30-year period. Like the first relationships happened sometime in the early 80s and they continued right up to 2010. And so one of the things that we've learned through talking to each other is that these, like what happened between Mark and me was not a personal betrayal. It was systematic abuse by an institutionally sexist organization that's been doing it for decades. And people say to us, and even the police have actually said as part of the court case that, well, you know, people lie in relationships all the time, which I think is a pretty depressing way of understanding human relationships. But it's also really not what was happening here. And like, Mark came into my life with fake ID and he'd been through a whole load of training programs. He was paid overtime for the nights that he spent with me. There was a back room that was tracking his movements, that was monitoring our communications, and there was a command structure that was deciding if I was going to have dinner with my boyfriend that night. And one of the things that we found from talking to the other women is that there was a psychological and emotional manipulation going on. So I think I said Mark told me lots of stories about how he was abandoned by his father when he was a kid and his unhappy childhood. Actually, his parents are still together, and I've read letters from other officers that were supposedly written from his mother's funeral. Very, very painful letters. Actually, his mother is still alive, and all of these officers left the relationships and the missions that they were on, the infiltrations. They had emotional breakdowns and they disappeared, leaving notes that suggested that they might be thinking of suicide and leaving their partners absolutely distraught. And these, we now know, are tactics that they're specifically trained in order to manipulate us. And so another of the things that we're really interested in is getting to the truth. And I guess I kind of naively believed that if we accused the police of something, they would have to, defend themselves and provide us with information about what was really happening. Actually, of course, what's happened is we've had the full might of the police legal department and the huge amounts of public funds being dedicated to making sure they don't have to give any information out at all. And one of the things that they are now saying is that they have a supposed policy of neither confirming nor denying anything to do with undercover policing. It hasn't been a policy up until now, but now they're claiming it's a policy, and they've actually tried to get entire cases thrown out of court because they don't want to answer the questions that they're being asked. And then in my case, they've tried to have the whole case sent to the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. If you're involved in campaigning around surveillance or privacy or human rights in the UK, you've probably heard of the Investigatory Powers Tribunal. It's basically a secret court that was set up just to hear cases brought against the secret state for abuse of human rights. After the Human Rights Act came in 2000 in the UK, they realized that actually a lot of the activities of the secret state would be violating people's rights, and so they brought in a legal framework and a secret court to make sure that nobody had any recourse, essentially, for that. Pass the slide. In our case, where we're trying to get our case out of the IPT, this is actually what the judge said, that Parliament clearly intended to override fundamental human rights by bringing that law in, so we can't complain that our human rights are being violated. And our human rights claim is sitting in the IPT still waiting for trial. So I've had to reveal a lot about my personal life and intimate details to the court and to the police in order to bring this case. And this is the kind of shit that we're getting in return. Nevertheless, over the last 5 years, a lot of information has come out, and we're running over time already, I think, and can't really go into it in detail, but I want to do a big shout out to some of the people who are doing the research. The Undercover Research Group and State Watch have been digging for years, and they've got really good websites with loads of information about this. The journalists Paul Lewis and Rob Evans and all of their sources that have been giving us this information and putting it out there, and then all of the other groups and individuals who were affected by these operations, and particularly the ones that are involved in the COPS campaign, who are keeping the pressure on to keep this information coming out and to keep them having to answer questions. And where we've got so far, actually, it's a kind of specifically weird and British thing, but you can measure how uncomfortable the British state feels about stuff that's going on by the number of investigations and inquiries and reports that are being produced about it. And on this issue of undercover cops, there's actually been, I think it's 18 different inquiries that have been started, or investigations that have been started. And when all else fails, what they do is they call for a public inquiry, and that's what they've just done. It's starting now. It's going to take 3 years.
And infiltration can also happen digitally. I mean, there's the use of sock puppets, which are fake social media profiles, and those are typically manned for weeks or months to make them look legitimate, and they can be used to enter and sow dissent in activist spaces. Then once we're talking about entrapment, this is when law enforcement's tactic where someone is encouraged or coerced into committing a crime they would not have done otherwise, and then they're set up by agent provocateurs, undercover cops, informants, etc. And they're very prominent cases of this throughout history. And when we're thinking about infiltration, entrapment, informants, there's a variety of things to consider. I mean, there's the idea that like, oh, if we're transparent, then we have less to lose and blah, blah, blah. There's some movement spaces that believe in this. The more liberal ones, the more progressive ones. I don't fully align with that because I'm just like, okay, well, what about the undocumented people in the room, or the black people in the room, or the people that do have more to lose? And then two, it's important to have some best practices when we're in organizing spaces and trying to navigate the complexity of infiltration, entrapment, etc. One is don't fucking Fed jacket. Fed jacket is when you go around saying, that person's a Fed, that person's a Fed. Oh my God, you're spreading rumors. You're spreading rumors or assumptions without actual evidence and information. And the reason that this is so important is that, as I mentioned before, Fed jacketing was one of the ways that the COINTELPRO got these movements to be disrupted. They increased paranoia. They made it less possible for people to trust each other and way more common for people to be ousted out of movements. And so what you don't want to do is Fed jacket. What you do want to do is find some other best practices. And here are some checklists of things that you can consider from the book War at Home that I mentioned. Check for the authenticity of any disturbing letter, rumor, phone call, or any other communication before acting on it. Ask the supposed source if he or she is responsible. 2, keep records of incidents that appear to reflect COINTELPRO type activity. Evaluate your response and report your experiences to folks around you, trusted people. Deal openly and honestly with differences within our movements about race, gender, class, religion, etc. before the FBI and police can exploit them. Also, don't try to expose a suspected agent or informant without solid proof. Purges based on mere submission only help the FBI and police create distrust and paranoia, and it generally works better to criticize what a disruptive person says or does without speculating as to why. And then it's support all movement activists who come under government attack. Don't put off all movement activists who come under government attack. Don't be put off by political slander, such as recent attempts to smear some militant opponents of government policies as terrorists. Our most powerful weapon against political repression is effective organizing around the needs of those who are affected by capitalism, etc. The book is an amazing resource I highly recommend checking out. If you want to check out that book, go to the link in my description and find my Patreon post about this video where you can get a lot of the resources that are mentioned throughout this talk. So we have talked about the tools of state surveillance, about how activists and organizers combat these tools, and you have a bunch of resources. Now we're at the end of this video. Where do you go next? Start implementing these tools. Think of where you are in your organizing journey. Think of the threats or the risks against you, and think of what tools that you can use accordingly with best practices that are revisited within yourself and with people around you in order to organize more effectively, in order to be more anonymous, in order to protect the information about the things that you're planning accordingly, in order to not open yourself up to state surveillance, to state intervention, to state infiltration. Starting there is way better than thinking, I need to get the most tough computer and I need to get all these masks and all these other things. What are the simple tools? Start encrypting your forms of communication, meeting with people offline. Start finding creative ways to promote the work that you're doing so that everything isn't always tied back to the same person, thing, entity. And security culture can involve so many different things. There are so many different things beyond this video that we can tackle into, but these are the tools that the state are using. So study these tools, study them accordingly, and share information with your community and friends. Share this video, have conversations about it, talk to people. And learning these tools can be overwhelming and it can be a lot, but this is the first step in a long journey of continuous revisitation, of checking in with yourself and other people. And it's okay to feel overwhelmed, but really what I want you to feel and understand is informed. And hopefully feeling informed can let you know what the next few simple steps are. Maybe you get a burner phone that you take to actions. Maybe you encourage the folks that you're organizing with to start really taking communicating via encrypted systems more seriously. I want to ground us in the fact that a lot of the logics that the police and the state uses to survey people who are criminal or criminalized or they consider terrorists, these same systems and tactics have been used against Black, brown, poor, Indigenous, and undocumented people since the beginning of the terror, which is the American Project and beyond. Tap into and learn from communities that have much more deep experiences with combating and surviving state violence and suppression. And remember that we can't stop every camera, we can't outrun every drone, we can't erase the state's desire to watch, record, and disrupt us, but that doesn't mean that we're powerless, because the goal isn't to be invisible, it's to be prepared. And it's important to reframe surveillance in our mind that it's not about guilt when the state is doing it, it's actually about control. If surveillance was only about catching criminals, why are mutual aid networks, Black organizers, Indigenous land defenders, and queer people constantly targeted? Why do police and intelligence agencies need to watch movements that are feeding people, defending water, demanding freedom, trying to stop people from being kidnapped? And the reality is that surveillance has never been about safety. It's about control, it's meant to isolate, it's meant to scare, it's meant to dissuade dissent, and it's meant to make us feel smaller in our bodies. When actually, what community and movements and justice and love does, it makes us feel larger than life, because we realize that we have the capacity to protect each other through anything. What would it look like to treat security as not something that is an individual act, but something that is collective, a culture or mode of behavior that can protect children, women, undocumented folks, trans folks, people of different ability levels, people that are immunocompromised? What does it look like for a security culture to account for that? Does surveillance happen? Will it happen in this post-capitalist, abolitionist, better world? Is there utility to surveillance outside of the system of capitalism, outside of the system of profiting from war and misery and violence? With all of that in mind, thank you for watching another addition to this Direct Action 101 series. Thank you for watching another video on security culture. Check out all the resources here. Spend an afternoon digging into them. Share them with your friends. Send them over in your group chats. Look into Signal, download it. Ground yourself in the fact that to fight for a better world, these are the systems and tools that we're up against. And this is only the beginning. This is a part of a larger continuum. And I'm proud to help other people learn. I'm proud to use whatever resources I have. And I hope this is a tool that helps you move forward in the ways that you need to. Comment below with something new that you learned or something that you want to add on that I brought up in this video. Let me know if you've dug into security culture in the past and how your ideas or thoughts around it are shifting in this day and age. And consider becoming a channel member because you get early access to videos like this. Consider signing up for my Patreon because you get not only early access, but as I mentioned, all sorts of additional resources, media, things that are really going to help you dig into the topics in these videos even more. And so I really do consider my Patreon like a sort of follow-up educational resource. And Also, check out my podcast, The Dugout. It's a Black anarchist podcast where me and a co-host talk about a lot of the issues that are on this channel. Some of the videos from here end up there. And yeah, go outside, touch grass, get angry. Part 3, outro. Infiltration and entrapment work best when we feel isolated, when we lose trust in each other, when the revolution fails, when accountability needs to happen in interpersonal situations, and feelings, emotions scatter, when fear replaces organizing, when we pay too much attention to the ways that the state can harm or disappear us. But security culture doesn't mean we stop trusting. It means we build trust intentionally, that we move at the speed of trust, that we don't rush relationships, that we create a culture where people can ask questions, share concerns, and hold each other accountable without feeding the fear that the state wants us to drown in. If you organize long enough, you'll encounter repression in some form, but that's not a reason to quit. It's a reminder that what we're building, which is a future, resources of equality, of community self-defense, of love and harm reduction, that this future we're building is powerful enough to be feared. So we keep building, we stay grounded, we ask questions, we hold each other accountable, and we remember we don't need the state to keep us safe. We have each other. This Direct Action 101 series is definitely going to continue. I have to say, the security culture part of this definitely involved a lot more than I intended. I definitely didn't think it'd stretch across 3 videos. I definitely didn't think it would take me weeks to film. The summer got wild, but I'm proud of it. And there's actually like a part 4 that I have outlined about different expressions of security culture throughout history, but I'm just like, I can't do it all. And honestly, the fact that the outline is there just means that it might be useful down the line. So if you want another security culture video, let me know. I also think these videos are a primer. I'm not the most knowledgeable about that. I know the basics. I know the things that I'm learning. I know the things that I'm skill building on. But there's definitely people out there that could probably know more and talk about it more. And I think that leaves room for maybe to do interviews down the line, to talk to folks that have a lot more information and knowledge. So that could potentially be something in the series. And honestly, it's like, how long would this Direct Action 101 series go? I have no fucking clue because there's so many things to talk about. But I endlessly say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I view these videos as a way for people to learn, as resources, as tools. It's not the end all be all. It's not where you can find all the information. Comment and let me know what you want to see in the next videos. And you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Talk to you later.